Not anytime soon, according to this author. As long as politicians face no political consequences for deficit spending, and as long as the Federal Reserve keeps the Treasury bond market propped up, then many more trillions can be added to the national debt. Meanwhile, more fragile debt um, situations, more fragile debt bubbles exist, and situations in the private sector. Unlike government debt, which carries the implicit backing of the Fed's unlimited printing press, debts incurred by corporations, investors, consumers, and students can default. Globally, there exists $250 trillion in debt against economic assets of around $100 trillion. The notional value of all derivatives now approaches a quadrillion dollars. It's been called the everything bubble, and it could soon lead to the everything bust. U.S. household debt rose to a record 13.5 trillion dollars in the fourth quarter of 2018. Mortgages, student loans, car loans, and credit cards represent enormous burdens even during a good economy. These burdens will prove unbearable for millions of Americans in the years ahead. For many, the financial crisis is already here. Pending home sales have fallen on a year over year basis for 13 consecutive months. Farm loan delinquencies recently hit their highest level in 9 years. More than 7 million Americans are delinquent on their auto loan payments, which is an all time record, and some 5.1 million people are in default on their student loans. Student loans now rank as the second largest category of American consumer debt behind mortgages. The cruel reality is that many of these gender studies and art history type degrees will never be worth as much as the job market as they cost to obtain. The main consequence of the government subsidized student loan bubble is to enable college tuitions and fees to rise at a much higher rate than salaries. It's not that universities have had to raise costs to pay for their top notch professors. It's just one example of how easy money and distorted government incentivizes malinvestment. Another example, of course, is the stock market. Investors in search of returns have bid up stocks to bubble heights following years of artificially depressed interest rates. Big corporations have tried to manipulate their own share prices higher by engaging in leveraged stock buybacks, even at lofty recent valuations. A composite of equity leverage, including margin accounts and leveraged exchange traded products, shows total leverage at an all time high last December. A deleveraging event started to take hold into Christmas until the U.S. Until the U.S. Treasury Secretary convened the quote plunge protection team and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell turned dovish. The Fed faces another potential deleveraging event just around the corner in the corporate bond market. The U.S. investment grade corporate bond market has swelled to about $5.2 trillion, according to Bloomberg. That represents an increase of more than $3 trillion over the last 10 years. Even more alarming, around half of these investment grade bonds are just one tier away from being rated as junk bonds. Between now and 2021, an unprecedented spike in outstanding commercial debt comes due. That could be a disaster, especially if credit spreads widen and or interest rates go up across the board. Another potential bubble unwinding to come in stock market index funds. Passively managed index funds have grown from 4.5% of total U.S. stock market assets in 2002 to 17% in 2018. The late John Bogle, founder of Vanguard and index investing pioneer, turned skeptical on the outsized growth of index funds prior to his death. Perhaps these vehicles had become too successful for their own good. The fundamental problem is that index funds assume an underlying efficient market where securities analysis and market discovery takes place. When the largest shareholders of the blue chip stocks are index funds, valuations can get distorted. This is a big deal. These two big failed banks, especially when you're talking about basic consumers being so far behind on their car payments, so far behind on their student loans, and to me, the last thing to take a hit when it comes to consumers is going to be their rents or their mortgages. Everything else goes first. So that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see student loans going. We're starting to see car payments going. We're starting to see credit card debt rise, and that's how it starts. That's how it begins. So moving forward, I'm gonna let y'all know, man. I'm gonna stream. I'm definitely gonna stream. We're gonna go over tonight. But I do want to get into this why 98 number, why trust, and why now. Just jumping into it. I'm gonna say it off top. The 98 number, people love that stuff because that's the EIN that designates a foreign entity, and that's the only EIN that you can get without submitting or giving them a social security number. But a 98 number is just that. It's an employer identification number. It needs to be coupled with what we know as a specific trust indenture. The essence of all trust is divided title to property. To illustrate this, let's suppose a man owns perfect title, also known as lawful, complete, or full title, to a home and decides to create a trust to shelter that home. He first grants or donates the perfect title to his home into the trust. The home thus becomes trust property, also known as the trust corpus. The grantor then divides his perfect title to the home into two subcomponents, legal title and equitable title. Each subtitle contains a different set of rights. Legal title includes the rights of actual control and disposal of trust property. Equitable title includes the right of possession and use of trust property. I'm going to say that again. Legal title includes the rights of actual control and disposal of trust property. Equitable title includes the right of possession and use of trust property. The difference between legal and equitable titles is similar to the difference in rights between a landlord and a tenant. The landlord owns the house and has legal right of control and disposal. Disposal meaning sale of the house or property. The tenant has the equitable right to live in, use, and possess the property or the house. Although the tenant lives in the house, he has no legal right to tear down walls or sell the property. All right. When an individual has perfect title to his house, or a lodial title, he has both the legal right of ownership and the equitable right of use. He has the right to both control and live in his house. However, when he creates a trust, he appoints one or more trustees to hold the legal title to his home, and he appoints one or more beneficiaries to actually live on the property. The trustees effectively manage the home. The beneficiaries get to live in the home. Jeez. When an individual has perfect title to his house, he has both the legal right of ownership and the equitable right of use. He has the right to both control and live in his house. However, when he creates a trust. He appoints one or more trustees to hold the legal title to his home, and he appoints one or more beneficiaries to actually live on the property. The trustees effectively manage the home. The beneficiaries get to live in the home. It's a hard and fast rule that the trustees can't enjoy the benefits of the trust property, nor can beneficiaries exercise any real control or ownership over the trust property. Whenever a single individual holds both the legal title and equitable title to a trust property, the subtitles are once again unified or merged into a single perfect title. The trust is said to be executed and ceases to exist. Trusts offer a number of advantages. First, trusts can provide for beneficiaries who are too incompetent to provide for themselves. For example, a wealthy father can create a trust that includes money or property that's to be used exclusively for the benefit of his minor children. As beneficiaries, his children will get the use of his father's property, possibly a house, or receive the profits from a business or investment. But they don't own legal title to the house or business and thus cannot foolishly sell the property. The right of sale and actual control of the trust property is left to the trustees. The advantage of this system is that if the father dies when the children are young and foolish, he need not worry about his kids selling the house for $1,000 to buy a new electric guitar or some other things. A second and perhaps more important advantage of trusts is that they provide limited legal liability for trust property and trust members. For example, suppose the kids who are beneficiaries of the mansion left by their wealthy father get drunk and cause an automobile accident in which several people are killed or injured. The survivors and heirs of the victims may see the kids' multi-million-dollar home and sue to gain ownership of that property. But if the mansion is held in trust, their lawsuit will be unsuccessful. As beneficiaries, the children get to use the mansion, but they don't own it. As a result, you can no more sue the beneficiaries for the property they use than you can sue the owner of an apartment complex when one of the tenants causes an automobile accident on the street. Shielded by a network of trusts, it's entirely possible to live like a king and never have personal assets of more than $500 to your name. Sure, people can still sue you. They can even win massive judgments against you. But insofar as you lack legal title to the property, you own nothing, and therefore there's nothing that can be taken from you. As a result, you can be virtually litigation-proof. Essentially, no one will waste money paying lawyers to sue a beneficiary who has no more personal assets than a homeless bum. A few years ago, a former governor of a southwestern state retired from public office into a life of wealth and leisure. He promoted and personally guaranteed an investment scheme which failed. Based on his personal guarantee and presumed personal wealth, he was ultimately sued by his investors for millions of dollars they'd lost. On receipt of the suit, the former governor's lawyers replied that everything their client had was in trust. His personal net worth was trivial, and they would therefore not even bother to defend against the investor's suit. Even though the former governor lived like a king in a mansion, his assets were all held in trust. He was a legal pauper and therefore beyond the reach of the lawsuit. If the investors wanted to waste even more of their money paying their lawyers to sue the former governor, they were free to do so, but they never collected a dime. The result, the former governor stayed in his mansion and the investor's suit was dropped. You can't squeeze blood from a turnip or a legitimate trust. A third advantage is that trust can be extremely secretive. The man who places his mansion in trust for the benefit of his children has no obligation to inform the state or his neighbors of the creation of that trust. Your trust might only become public knowledge if it were entangled in a lawsuit. Although there are statutory trusts which are sanctioned by the state and created according to the state-approved rules, there is no requirement that trust be statutory. None, zero. You can create a private trust right now in privacy of your own home without informing anyone except the trustee you appoint to manage the trust. Unlike corporations, which must be registered with the state, trust can be established without public or governmental knowledge or approval. Despite their several advantages, much like the Force, the Star Wars movies, trusts also have a dark side. For example, if government creates a trust and tempts you to accept its benefits, it can thereafter treat you as a beneficiary of that trust. While being a beneficiary may have certain advantage, limited liability, secrecy, and private relationships, being a beneficiary of a government trust can create serious political and legal disabilities. Beneficiaries implicitly surrender any claim to legal and or unalienable rights with respect to trust property. That's why we own nothing, control everything. We don't have it in our names. The problem with beneficiaries is that they have no legal rights within the context of the trust. The reason for this disability is that, according to Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856, all rights flow from title. For example, the reason you can drive your car, but you can't drive mine, is that you have a title to your car, but you have no title to mine. Your right to live in your home or your apartment ultimately flows from a title to that property. Even if you don't personally hold a title to that house or apartment, you are ultimately renting from someone who does. But it's not only true that your rights to property flow from your title to a property, it's true that the kind of rights you receive depend on the kind of title you hold. Virtually everyone assumes that there is only one kind of title, the perfect or complete title, that a grantor must possess to create a trust. That assumption is wrong. Remember how the essential feature of a trust is division of perfect title into two subtitles, legal and equitable? With legal title, trustees receive one bundle of rights: ownership, control, and disposal. With equitable title, beneficiaries receive a different bundle of rights: possession and use. These bundles are mutually exclusive. By definition, being a trustee means you can have no equitable rights in trust property. Likewise, beneficiaries by definition have no legal rights to trust property. This distinction between kinds of title becomes particularly important when a beneficiary goes to court as a plaintiff. Although the plaintiff beneficiary may suppose his case will be heard in the court of law, he'll be wrong. The only purpose for a court of law is to determine legal rights. It follows that if you don't have legal title to the subject matter of a lawsuit, you can't have legal rights to that subject matter, and therefore you have no standing at law. Unless you have legal title to the subject matter of a case, there's nothing for a court of law to decide. As a result, beneficiaries cannot invoke a court of law which only decides legal rights when they litigate. Instead, beneficiaries must always invoke a court of equity, wherein the judge rules strictly according to his own alleged conscience. In equity, the judge is unbound by law, and the litigants are virtually helpless to resist almost any decision the judge wishes to impose. If the judge doesn't like the color of your eyes, your political bias, or your religious beliefs, he can rule against you. Beneficiaries have virtually no rights or recourse to defend themselves against judicial bias or even overt oppression. Beneficiaries are always at the mercy of the court. Thus, from the government's point of view, degrading a citizen to the status of a beneficiary essentially empowers the government to treat the beneficiary as a subject. As subjects, you are obliged to accept without question or constitutional defense virtually any regulation the government wishes to impose. In other instances, government also tricks us into accepting the role of trustee relative to governmental or private trust. If we unwittingly accept that status of trustee, government can impose a virtually unlimited list of fiduciary duties. In the capacity of trustee, we must accept whatever burdens and obligations are placed upon us by the trust indenture, even if those duties are seemingly unconstitutional. Let me double check. I'm just gonna double check, make sure I'm coming in clear. Still, excuse me. Where was I at? Although you can't be both trustee and beneficiary of the same trust, you can simultaneously be a trustee of one trust and a beneficiary of another. As a result, government will sometimes treat us as beneficiaries, sometimes as trustees. In either case or claim on unalienable rights is compromised or implicitly denied. This denial is particularly frustrating, mysterious, and seemingly inexplicable because not one man in 10,000 could even imagine the government might surreptitiously impose these trust relationships and legal personalities on us without our express knowledge. But through these unexpected trust relationships, the government and courts can secretly bypass the Constitution and deprive us of our unalienable rights based on the presumption that we understood and voluntarily agreed to surrender those rights when we became beneficiaries. At first, the idea that government could use trust to bypass the Constitution and deprive us of rights or subject us to unexpected duties sounds absurd, but trusts have several major attributes that make this kind of covert oppression possible. First, anyone, including government, can create a trust without expressly using the words trust, trustee, grant, grantor, benefit, beneficiary, or any other term that is normally associated with trusts, regardless of words used. And even when no words are used, it is incumbent on every person to recognize their role in a trust by recognizing the nature of their relationship to another person or trust property. Usually less than one person in 100 can even understand what is just being said. Worse, one person in 10,000 can recognize and trust a relationship whenever he happens to participate in one. For example, suppose you borrow my pen. Insofar as I expect you to return my pen, we have just entered into an unstated trust relationship where I am the beneficiary and you are the trustee. Even though neither of us use the words trust, benefit, etc., etc., even though you did not expressly agree to return my pen, I am trusting that you will return my pen. You are trusted with the control of my pen, and therefore we have a simple, unexpressed trust relationship. Creating trust relationships can be just that simple. As a result, it's easy for government to entangle folks in trust relationships and thereby compromise whatever rights they might normally expect to have without people having any idea of what's happening. Further, few people realize that whenever the word application is used by a governmental agency, it typically means application for benefits. For example, when you fill out an application for a driver's license, social security card, or bank account, you are probably applying for a benefit to be provided by a government trust. You can't normally receive a benefit without being a beneficiary, and beneficiaries have no legal rights. Thus, by voluntarily filling out an application, you may unwittingly forfeit your claim to any legal rights or standing at law relative to the trust property. Like to read an express trust agreement, read the software license from Microsoft or any other major software provider. The license identifies you as the end user. Anytime you see the word use,
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. This is Bezel Bay. You're locked in live to trustee training. This is, we're going to talk about the actual declaration that was actually passed, the national declaration, the national state of emergency that's actually been passed. And those of you that are actually tuning in for the first time, you're definitely locked in live to WTDTA radio. We ask everybody who's definitely in, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend to definitely get in, because we're going to be covering a lot of major information. And basically, I kind of want to break a lot of this stuff down. Like, in one aspect, everybody wants to learn about the remedies of how they utilize their platforms. I'm going to go over that as well. I'm going to actually do two things. In this particular segment, everything that you've been dealing with in the aspect of this particular platform, I want you to literally keep in mind that HR 5404 is no longer up for debate. If you don't know what HR 5404 is, I want you to understand this, because the actual declaration that's actually being done that's dealing with this whole coronavirus scare, as far as what I'm concerned with, it is a scare in the aspect that they're trying to get your attention because of some things that are definitely paying attention, some things that are definitely happening. A lot of you guys are probably oblivious to a lot of it because, for sometimes, we've been going through a lot of stuff. Sometimes we kind of get distracted with a lot of distractions that they put out there. So it's my job to kind of bring you back to the point of reality. So first of all, I'm going to bring you back to HR 5404. And bring you back to this reality, because in order for you to know where you're going, you got to know where you came from. So keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
There is one version of the bill. Text available as XML HTML. XML HTML, new window. TXT. PDF. PDF provides a complete and accurate display of this text. Formatting necessary for an accurate reading of this legislative text, for example, italics, strike-throughs, or bolded brackets indicating which text is to be added or omitted, may be missing from the TXT display. For a complete and accurate display, see the PDF. Shown here, introduced in-house, March 22, 2018. 115th Congress 2D Session. HR 5404. To define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. In the House of Representatives. March 22, 2018. Mr. Mooney of West Virginia introduced the following bill, which was referred to the Committee on Financial Services. A bill to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1. Findings. Congress finds the following. 1. The United States dollar has lost 30%. There is one version of the bill. Text of its purchasing power since 2000, and 96% of its purchasing power since the end of the gold standard in 1913. 2. Under the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation objective, the dollar loses half of its purchasing power every generation, or 35 years. 3. American families need long-term price stability to meet their household spending needs, save money, and plan for retirement. 4. The Federal Reserve policy of long-term inflation has made American manufacturing uncompetitive, raising the cost of United States manufactured goods by more than 40% since 2000, compared to less than 20% in Germany and France. 5. Between 2000 and 2010, United States manufacturing employment shrunk by one-third after holding steady for 30 years at nearly 20 million jobs. 6. The American economy needs a stable dollar, fixed exchange rates, and money supply controlled by the market, not the government. 7. The gold standard puts control of the money supply with the market instead of the Federal Reserve. 8. The gold standard means legal tender defined by and convertible into a certain quantity of gold. 9. Under the gold standard through 1913, the United States economy grew at an annual average of 4%, one-third larger than the growth rate since then and twice the level since 2000. 10. The International Gold Exchange Standard from 1914 to 1971 did not provide for a United States dollar convertible into gold, and therefore helped cause the Great Depression and stagflation. 11. The Federal Reserve's trickle-down policy of expanding the money supply with no demand for it has enriched the owners of financial assets but endangered the jobs, wages, and savings of blue-collar workers. 12. Restoring American middle-class prosperity requires change in monetary policy authorized to Congress in Article I, Section 8, Clause 5 of the Constitution. Section 2. Define the dollar in terms of gold. Effective 30 months after the date of enactment of this Act. 1. The Secretary of the Treasury, in this Act referred to as the Secretary, shall define the dollar in terms of a fixed weight of gold, based on that day's closing market price of gold. And 2. Federal Reserve banks shall make Federal Reserve notes exchangeable with gold at the statutory gold definition of the dollar. Section 3. Disclosure of holding. During the 30-month period following the date of enactment of this Act, the United States government shall take timely and reasonable steps to disclose all of its holdings of gold, together with a contemporaneous report of any United States governmental purchases or sales, thus enhancing the ability of the market and of market participants to arrive at the fixed dollar gold parity in an orderly fashion.
Now this is what I want you to pay attention to. You just actually saw HJR, or actually HR 5404. It's the coroner's report on what the dollar is. So in order for Donald J. Trump, in my opinion, to enforce the actual legislation, they needed a distraction. This coronavirus is a major distraction because it's affecting commerce. They hadn't effectively had this type of law since the Great Depression, as far as the stock market is concerned. And then the major events that have actually been postponed is designed to get everybody's perception on the actual virus and or the effects of it, not realizing what this one major event is actually doing is it's actually allowing a new global reset to happen right before your eyes. And if it's happening right before your eyes and the dollar's being affixed to a fixed weight of gold, the question today is he who holds the gold makes the rules. And I ask you, are any of your assets held in trust backed by gold? Because that is a question that you answer with an affirmative no. I don't have any gold to substantiate any of my holdings. Then this next part of what we're going to talk about is going to greatly impact exactly where you stand. Now before we begin, I would like to profess that here on WTDTA Radio, we do not profess to give legal advice. Each and everything you hear in this particular broadcast is designed to be for educational purposes only. We do not profess to give legal advice. This is only for educational purposes only. We actually, each and everything that you hear in this particular broadcast, if you feel you need to actually seek out legal advice, you actually go out and those particular liaisons to do so. But here on WTDTA Radio, we're here to give you educational information only. Kings and queens, you've been hearing the struggle and the argument about sovereignty. You've been hearing the patriots talk about the secured party creditor component, various different individuals using this to discharge and offset debt. What if I told you that everything that you're actually experiencing or witnessing is all part of an accounting equation? And that accounting equation is called current expected credit losses. Current expected credit losses. I want you to keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
Yeah, put it in your hand. And depending on where you live and how high of a social score you have, you'll get better prices. Like if you have a politically dissenting opinion, you have a lower, political score. So bread's going to cost $4 for you, but me, I'm a good guy. It's according to the, the government. And I mind my business and don't talk at all. Bread's going to be $2 for me on this universal basic income type stuff. When we get to the point where there are no jobs, and the jobs that do exist are so saturated with people attempting to do those jobs, like service jobs. Let's talk about service jobs. If a robot can't do it, then there's going to be so many people. There's going to be such an influx of people trying to do your job, the job that you're in, that robots can't do, that the price that you make off of your service is going to hit the floor, because there's going to be so many people doing the same thing you're doing. If you do nails, good luck. If you braid hair, good luck. If you offer certain types of consulting services, good luck. Accountants, good luck. Certain lawyers, good luck. If you clean houses, good luck. If you do any types of manual labor, good luck, because those manual labor jobs are going to be crazy packed. Crazy packed. There's going to be one semi-truck in the front of a fleet of 6 semi-trucks. So the one in the front will have a driver in it, and the 5 behind the first one will have no drivers in it. It'll be connected wirelessly. We're going to be losing so many different things, and you're going to be very happy that you set up your private estate. You're going to be very happy that you started your own business, whether you're doing it through an LLC or corporation, or you're doing it through an actual business trust. You're going to be so happy that you spent the time to learn what you learned and implement what you're able to implement, because you were able to set up not only yourself, but maybe families and friends, whoever, and be in a position of power and control. When this stuff starts to change, it's going to change. It's going to change. Why now? Because
welcome
you can still
to PwC's weekly accounting podcast series. I'm Heather Horn. Today, we're celebrating our 50th podcast. Thanks for joining us each week. We couldn't do it without you. And to celebrate, not only do we have cake in the studio, we've got a great episode for you. I'm joined in the studio by Christophe Cadu, John Spivey, and Mei-Yin Ng. This is our first crossover event. We're combining some of our most popular topics: leases, revenue, and CECL. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Looking forward to our crossover episode where we're getting all big 3 accounting standards in one room to compare notes and hopefully to capture some great lessons learned for our clients. And for today's episode, I thought we'd kick things off by talking about, I know what you guys use as a common methodology for dealing with accounting change. So thought we would set the ground with the methodology and then go through the various stages and hear some best practices from each of you. So John, can you start off by just giving us the background on what the firm recommends if you're dealing with an accounting change, whether it's a new standard or some other change that's impacting your accounting?
Absolutely, Heather. Thanks. So at PwC, we approach GAAP change, which can mean anywhere from adopting to a new accounting standard or having to apply a different type of accounting to a series of transactions because of a business change, in really 4 phases. And real quick, the phases are assess, convert, embed, and optimize. So when we think about assess, this is really when you're thinking about the technical accounting and gathering up the documentation needed to actually figure out what the new accounting is going to be. And then from the convert or design phase, this is really all about gathering all of the information that you need in order to then apply the accounting going forward. Oftentimes, this is a big data exercise and figuring out which technology can support your use cases or your particular facts and circumstances and to the extent that you need automation. The third phase, which is more around embed or transform, is all about a system or all about applying automation, all about process and controls. So this is when, if you have selected a system, you implement it. And if not, you think about what process change is needed to your existing process in order to do the accounting on a go-forward basis, always thinking about approaching things with a controls mindset as well. And then finally, optimize. With any types of big change, we'll often take the approach of done is better than perfect, because sometimes you just kind of got to get it over the finish line and you may not be able to get everything done. So it's always good to kind of take stock after you've achieved compliance to figure out if there's more opportunities for automation, or if there's more opportunities to make it more scalable, or if better well controlled, or if there's any issues that you need to go in and fix. So no matter what accounting change you're thinking about, as long as you kind of take it in those 4 steps, you're generally going to get to where you need to be.
So John, it's interesting because revenue was implemented for public companies January 1, 2018 for calendar year ends, and then May, leasing, January 1, 2019, and then Christoph, most recently Cecil, January 1, 2020. But interestingly enough, I know from talking to you guys before, it's not like, oh, all the revenue people are optimizing and all the Cecil people are still in the early stages, but you can be kind of in any stage depending on what different things you're dealing with. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have experienced from that. And maybe Christoph, since Cecil was the most recent, I'll start with you just to talk about some lessons from the assess phase.
Yeah, so thanks, Heather. The assess phase, as far as Cecil is concerned, was typically a 2 to 3 months exercise. Cecil is a fairly complex exercise that requires input from not only accounting, but from credit risk, IT, data, the economic forecasting unit to the extent there was one. So it was very multidisciplinary. So the lesson learned was there to engage all the stakeholders early in the process and do as complete a job as possible early in the project to engage all these stakeholders, but also to really think through constraints around data and around the people and process aspects of Cecil, because that drove really big decisions going forward.
And it's interesting bringing all these groups together, and I think that's been a common theme we've had in past podcasts where we've talked about any of these standards. This is not something that accounting can do by themselves. Like in a vacuum, they need the knowledge from across the business to do all of these.
That's right, and we've seen horror stories of companies not taking enough time to do that assessment across the board. Going down the path of a particular modeling or IT production platform choice, and then later on realizing that that was a flawed choice and they needed to go back because they hadn't engaged the right people up front.
Yeah, and John, one of the things I thought was interesting when we were talking before, like I said, I assumed that the public companies would be far beyond the assess phase, but you had some interesting points around the fact that because business is changing, you don't necessarily get past that quickly.
Yeah, Heather. So across all industries, we are seeing our clients and companies reevaluate their business model at a very foundational level. We see things around where companies have historically been more of a products company moving toward even more of a subscription basis. So, for example, several of the luxury car manufacturers are currently offering subscriptions to their customers. So instead of a historical, lease or potentially buying a car, you now pay a fixed fee per month. And you can go in and 1 month maybe you want the sedan, and then the next 6 months later you need an SUV for the winter, and you can continually go and trade in cars and enjoy the benefits of the subscription. So this is a very different model from how the companies have always interacted with their customers. So in order to make this model successful, you have to go through and make sure that you have the right back office functions to support this to enable your customer experience. You need to have the right billing in place to do subscription billing, and then of course the revenue recognition is different when applying a subscription type model than it would be from just a ship and bill type model. So we see our clients and other companies continually going through an assessment phase as their products and services are being changed foundationally to react to the market.
Yeah, and I think that's just another best practice in general, right? Because when we tend to find errors in accounting, which we don't like to see, it tends to be when someone maybe implemented a standard once, business starts changing, and then they didn't keep up with that from an accounting perspective. So definitely good advice, even if you're not making a dramatic change to your business model. So May, maybe moving to the convert stage, since you were recently in that, dealing with from a leasing standard perspective, what are some of the best practices that you can point out from a leasing perspective?
Sure, Heather. So from the mandate for leasing, right, we have to separate it out into two different timelines for the public companies versus the non-public companies. So for the public companies, given the deadline being January 2019, majority of the public companies have either completed their implementation at this point. PwC did a survey in fall of 2019 with over 900 survey respondents across all the different industries. So of the respondents, what we found was that 31% of the public companies who have already implemented the system are kind of going back to the assess to figure out what alternatives and enhancements can they perform, right? For the non-public companies or the private companies, majority, I would say about 50% or so are full steam ahead on implementation. So from a convert design perspective, half of them are going through that process of either putting in a new system, or half of them are thinking through using spreadsheets. So more of a workaround solution to comply with the standard.
So I think, May, what's interesting is if you think about companies that are implementing these types of standards, often there is the sort of rush to the finish line, and then you get to day 2, you breathe a big sigh of relief, but then you say, oh, what am I going to do now? And I know we'll get to some of that with the optimize phase, but since you mentioned this with the assess, how do people think about this in terms of systems and other things that they may need to change once they've already implemented the standard?
What we've seen in a lot of clients is absolutely what you just said, right? Is get us to the finish line. How can we become compliant to meet the deadline? And we do often try to meet their expectations and requirements by implementing the simplest solution to get them compliant. Then they'll have time to breathe and then figure out, okay, this is not the most effective. How can we go back and look into optimizing the process?
I think as far as adopting the leasing standard, I do think some of our clients, both public and private, have underestimated the amount of effort it takes to gather all of the information and data needed to actually do the accounting. We've seen companies employ several different techniques around thinking through the completeness of their lease population. There's companies send out surveys. There's sometimes you can do analytics on your AP function to see if you're paying 12 recurring monthly payments or quarterly payments, something you want to dig into. But I mean, companies are thinking through and spending a lot of time on completeness. One of the areas and lessons learned from this one is you need to make sure you have a complete listing of all of the data that you're going to need to load into your final solution or do the accounting whenever you're actually abstracting all of those data from a paper lease. I mean, for example, we had a client with around 8,000 leases, and they got about 4,000 leases into it before they realized that they needed 3 additional fields for disclosures. That they didn't previously expect that they needed. And there was really no other way to get that information other than go and reread those leases and abstract it. So it's something that, as you're thinking through the convert design phase, you need to have a decent vision of your end state and really make sure that you're only touching documents once to the extent that you don't have your data in a structured, reliable format elsewhere.
Well, I think we were all cringing when you gave that example, John. That is definitely an implementation horror story. Christophe, anything specific for CECL on the convert phase, or the same types of lessons that we saw in revenue and leasing?
Yeah, generally same type of lessons around thinking ahead about your data requirements very carefully. Also, what we found in CECL, expanding on the data point, was that the data sources that clients were using for CECL were similar to data sources they may have used for other purposes, such as stress testing for regulated banks. The slight difference, though, is that the stress testing data wasn't subject to SOX controls, and that became a bit of a last-minute discovery and issue as they realized they had to SOX certify certain data sources late in the game. So
Yes, yes, yes. Understand that CECL, which is current expected credit losses, is what is taking place. We now fast forward to the coronavirus. The coronavirus, which is a pandemic in a lot of professional opinions, it impacts so much of our economy that we have to take a very different approach and a certain look. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a pandemic that affects commerce, where it affects the entertainment industry, the travel agency, the grocery store industry, the banking industry, then you have a pandemic of biblical proportion that is designed to actually force individuals to be in compliance with a certain series of laws and compliance. I now bring you to what you're about to hear in the actual declaration of the state of emergency by a Donald J. Trump. That was actually passed earlier. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
I do, Mark. Yes, indeed. Fair enough. You bet. George, how you doing?
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful day in the Rose Garden. Appreciate everybody being here. Today I'd like to provide an update to the American people on several decisive new actions we're taking in our very vigilant effort to combat and ultimately defeat the coronavirus. We've been working very hard on this. We've made tremendous progress. When you compare what we've done to other areas of the world, it's pretty incredible. A lot of that had to do with the early designation and the closing of the borders. And as you know, Europe was just designated as the hotspot right now, and we closed that border a while ago. So that was lucky, or through talent or through luck, call it whatever you want. But through a very collective action and shared sacrifice, national determination, we will overcome the threat of the virus. I also announced Wednesday night, following the advice of our medical professionals, who are doing a tremendous job, and we appreciate it very much, that we're suspending the entry of foreign nationals who have been to Europe in the last 14 days from entering the United States. citizens, permanent residents, and our families, any of the families returning from Europe will be subject to extra screening as well as self-isolation for a period of 14 days. As the World Health Organization confirmed today, many of the things that what we said were 100% correct, including our designation before them of Europe. Like our earlier very aggressive actions with China, this measure will save countless lives. I appreciate a number of the folks behind me, number of the people behind me said that that saved a lot of lives, that early designation. But it is only the beginning of what we're really doing, and now we're in a different phase. We had some very old and obsolete rules that we had to live with. It worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances. They were there for a long time. They were in place for a long time, and we're breaking them down now. And they're very usable for certain instances, but not for this. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion of very important and a large amount of money for states and territories and localities in our shared fight against this disease. In furtherance of the order, I'm urging every state to set up emergency operation centers effective immediately. You're going to be hearing from some of the largest companies and greatest retailers and medical companies in the world. They're standing right behind me and aside of me. I'm also asking every hospital in this country to activate its emergency preparedness plan so that they can meet the needs of Americans everywhere. The hospitals are very engaged. New York and various other places are also very engaged. I just spoke with Governor Cuomo. We had a very good conversation, and we're working very strongly with many states, including New York. The emergency orders I'm issuing today will also confer broad new authority to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Secretary of HHS will be able to immediately waive provisions of applicable laws and regulations to give doctors, all hospitals, and healthcare providers maximum flexibility to respond to the virus and care for patients. This includes the following critical authorities: the ability to waive laws to enable telehealth, a fairly new and incredible thing that's happened in the not so distant past. I tell you, what they've done with telehealth is incredible. It gives remote doctors visits and hospital check-ins, the power to waive certain federal license requirements so that doctors from other states can provide services in states with the greatest need. Number two, the ability to waive requirements that critical access hospitals limit the number of beds to 25 and the length of stay to 96 hours. The ability to waive the requirements of a 3-day hospital stay prior to admission to a nursing home, big thing. The authority to waive the rules to hinder hospitals' ability to bring additional physicians on board or obtain needed office space. They can do as they want. They can do what they have to do. They know what they have to do. Now they don't have any problem getting it done. The authority to waive rules that severely restrict where hospitals can care for patients within the hospital itself, ensuring that the emergency capacity can be quickly established. We'll remove or eliminate every obstacle necessary to deliver our people the care that they need and that they're entitled to. No resource will be spared, nothing whatsoever. 10 days ago, I brought together the CEOs of commercial labs at the White House and directed them to immediately begin working on a solution to dramatically increase the availability of tests. Other countries have called us and worked with us, and they're doing similar things or will be doing similar things. As a result of that action today, we're announcing a new partnership with private sector to vastly increase and accelerate our capacity to test for the coronavirus. We want to make sure that those who need a test can get a test very safely, quickly, and conveniently, but we don't want people to take a test if we feel that they shouldn't be doing it. And we don't want everyone running out and taking, only if you have certain symptoms. Using federal emergency authorities, the FDA approved a new test for the virus. We did this within hours after receiving the application from Roche, a process that would normally take weeks. We therefore expect up to 500,000 additional tests will be available early next week. We'll be announcing locations probably on Sunday night. I want to thank Roche, great company, for their incredible work. I'd also like to thank Thermo Fisher. The FDA's goal is to hopefully authorize the application within 24 hours. It'll go very quickly. It's going very quickly, which will bring additionally 1.4 million tests on board next week and 5 million within a month. I doubt we'll need anywhere near that. At the same time, we've been in discussions with pharmacies and retailers to make drive-through tests available in the critical locations identified by public health professionals. The goal is for individuals to be able to drive up and be swabbed without having to leave your car. I want to thank Google. Google is helping to develop a website. It's going to be very quickly done, unlike websites of the past, to determine whether a test is warranted and to facilitate testing at a nearby convenient location. We have many, many locations behind us, by the way. We cover this country and large parts of the world, by the way. We're not going to be talking about the world right now, but we cover very, very strongly our country, stores in virtually every location. Google has 1,700 engineers working on this right now. They've made tremendous progress. Our overriding goal is to stop the spread of the virus and to help all Americans who have been impacted by this. Again, we don't want everybody taking this test. It's totally unnecessary. And this will pass. This will pass through, and we're going to be even stronger for it. We've learned a lot. Tremendous amount has been learned. I want to thank Deborah Birx, and I want to ask her maybe to come up and say a few words as to what's happening. Dr. Birx is a highly respected person I've gotten to know very well over the last 6 days. And what we've done is rebuilt something that was very old-fashioned, somewhat obsolete, certainly obsolete when it comes to the kind of numbers that we're talking about. Dr. Birx, please. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think you know at the beginning of this epidemic, HHS through CDC proactively developed an assay built on the existing flu surveillance system. That surveillance system was then converted to diagnostic system. But last Tuesday, seeing the spread of the virus around the globe, the President realized that our current approach to testing was inadequate to meet the needs of the American public. He asked for an entire overhaul of the testing approach. He immediately called the private sector laboratories to the White House, as noted, and charged them with developing a high-throughput quality platform that can meet the needs of the American public. We are grateful to LabCorp and Quest for taking up the charge immediately after the meeting, and within 72 hours, bringing additional testing access, particularly to the outbreak areas of Washington State and California, and now across the country. We are also very grateful to the universities and large hospital systems that took up the charge to develop their own quality tests, made available by new FDA guidance. This has resulted in expanded testing across New York, California, Washington, Colorado, and you see sometimes those drive-through options that have been made available through these high-throughput options. Following the meeting last week, major commercial laboratory equipment and diagnostic companies took immediate action to adopt and develop new testing systems. Last night, the initial company, Roche, received FDA approval, moving from request to development to approval in record time. This innovative approach centered fully on unleashing the power of the private sector, focusing on providing convenient testing to hundreds of thousands of Americans within short turnaround times. In less than 2 weeks together, we have developed a solution that we believe will meet the future testing needs of Americans. I understand how difficult this has been. I was part of the HIV/AIDS response in the 80s. We knew from first finding cases in 1981, it took us to almost 1985 to have a test. It took us another 11 years to have effective therapy. It is because of the lessons learned from that we were able to mobilize and bring those individuals that were key to the HIV response to this response. I understand that a lot of this behind-the-scenes action over the last couple of weeks was invisible to the press and the American people. But this intense effort has not only resulted in innovative solutions, but an automated, high-throughput system bringing the availability of these quality coronavirus testing to the American people at unprecedented speed. Finally, I want you to know in South Korea, they did have a large number of tests available over the last several weeks. Their positivity rate is between 3 and 4%. With LabCorp and Quest expanded testing, their positivity rate is between 1 and 2%. So we want to also announce this new approach to testing, which will start in the screening website up here, facilitated by Google, where clients and patients and people of interest can go, fill out a screening questionnaire, move down for symptoms or risk factors, yes. They would move down this and be told where the drive-through options would be for them to receive this test. The labs will then move to the high-throughput automated machines to be able to provide results in 24 to 36 hours. That is the intent of this approach. We have seen it work just in our own United States, and we want to bring this across the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to maybe have Tony, do you want to come up? You've become I think everybody out here knows you pretty well, but Tony's been doing a tremendous job working long hours, and you've seen a lot happen, but this has been, it's been a great experience, and working with you has been terrific. Tony, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is an example of, another example of what I've been referring to in my discussions with many of you in the audience as a proactive, leaning forward, aggressive, trying to stay ahead of the curve. And what you're seeing now with this order is that we're going to be able to remove the constraints so that people at the state, the local level, the individual physician, all the way up through the federal government will have as many constraints as possible removed for them to do everything they possibly can so that we can implement the things that we've been talking about. The containment, the mitigation, so that, as I've said many times, that curve that I refer to that goes up, we don't want to have that curve. We want to suppress it down to that small mound. And I think what we've done today is something that is going to be a very important element in having us be successful in doing that. We still have a long way to go. There will be many more cases, but we'll take care of that. And ultimately, as the President said, this will end. But what's going on here today is going to help it to end sooner than it would have. Thank you.
Now this is where it gets real interesting, family. All right, the coronavirus literally has shut down a lot of the golfing events, sporting events in general, a lot of large gatherings. In other words, it shut down a lot of revenue for a lot of businesses. Okay, not only has it shut down a lot of the revenue for the businesses, let's look at it from an import-export capacity. Because of the threat of being infected by corona, a lot of products or services aren't being properly shipped, or they're being shipped through an elongated process for substantiation and segregation in order to contain the actual virus itself. So we have mail, we have, matter of fact, keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something. Let's just listen to a lot of the stuff that corona is actually affecting, and then you'll be able to really get the gist of just how deep how impactful this whole event is and exactly where are we with this particular structure. Keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
Massive volume of selling. The stock market's down like 25% or maybe even more than that. I think like over 10,000 points or something like that. We've lost count because it's bleeding every day. Christopher Green, so critical market update. The Dow is just getting absolutely wrecked. It's a bloodbath, just like we predicted, down 2,300 points, probably drop lower. European stock market closed down in its worst day that it's ever seen, ever. Biggest point plunge ever. Warren Buffett is a freaking liar. He's like, oh, I've never seen anything like this in my entire career in 80 years. What a liar. He's been sitting on record amounts of cash just for this reason. You don't think he knew what was coming? Him and Bill Gates are best buddies, dude. They hang out with each other. Bill Gates is the one behind all these vaccines and vaccination programs and the Netflix show Pandemic. Of course he knew what was coming. My sources confirm Donald Trump is thinking about declaring a bank holiday here in the United States of America. The Federal Reserve just injected $1.5 trillion or something like that. Over $1 trillion, and the market doesn't even care because the bailouts aren't working anymore. 0% interest rates, negative interest rates are not going to work anymore. Everything's going to keep tanking and keep collapsing to zero. So the only thing Donald Trump can do to stem the bleeding right now, and this is what he's debating inside the White House, according to my sources, and they're good sources, is declaring bank closures, a bank holiday, closing down the stock market temporarily to halt the massive, massive volume of selling. The stock market's down like 25% or maybe even more than that. I think like over 10,000 points or something like that. We've lost count because it's bleeding every day since Donald Trump and his son Eric Trump recommended to go all in. Also, quick updates on Bitcoin and more. I'll be doing a special broadcast video at bitcoinrich.com very, very soon. I've been telling all of you to watch under 6,500 levels, which we are at right now. But until the bleeding stops and the Dow Jones Industrial Average, stops bleeding thousands of points, I really wouldn't do much here. I always look under $200 billion market cap. What's happening and why Bitcoin and gold has been selling off and Bitcoin, pretty much getting hammered today is because a lot of people are getting margin called and they need cash. Cash is king, right? Jesus Christ is our king. But in terms of finance, cash is king. So a lot of margin calls, people have to liquidate. They've got to cover. Hedge funds, institutional investment managers have to cover their investments to pay the margin calls, etc. Same thing happened in gold in 2008-09, then it sunk. And then by 2011, we had new all-time highs. So I really believe the same thing is happening again. And I think crypto and Bitcoin, I expect new all-time highs in the future. It took gold a couple years. It went from 08-09, collapse of Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and then by 2011. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that.
You got a drink?
Just a beer over there. I'm fine, though. Thank you so much. But then by 2011, they hit new all-time highs again. So, anyways, got a little good burger here. Very good help. Anyways, I'll be keeping you posted. But again, what do you need to know? Stay liquid. Cash is king. Get cash out of the bank if you don't already have it. Expect bank runs, bank holidays, and then 3 to 5 major cities in the United States to be quarantined in the coming days. I think Washington, D.C. could be next. Trudeau and his wife might be infected. Trump could be infected. Pence could be infected. A Brazilian official with him taking a photo just days ago infected. So again, Fed can't do anything. It is a planned implosion. So this is what they want, actually, to reset the whole system. And then all the smart money, as they change the rules, is moving to blockchain tech, gold, thank you, sir, silver, and other investments like that. So stay liquid. Also, if you don't already have my gold kit, click the link below, get it. It's absolutely free. Or visit me at gold.antvmedia.com. I explain all this and more. I predicted all this stuff. What I thought was going to happen, the deflationary collapse, that gold, crypto would go down, and then now would be the buying opportunity. So I'm a buyer gold. I'm a big, big buyer gold right now. And I don't think there's a lot of time left. I think gold's going to hit $2,000 an ounce, and it's going to probably go to $5,000 an ounce. Silver, I like silver a lot as well. So get that guy. Click the link below. Stay on your tippy toes. I love you guys so much. God bless. Jesus Christ is King. Don't be in fear. But understand, we are pretty much living in that zombie apocalypse movie now. I mean, it is crazy. People wearing gloves, masks everywhere you go, people freaking out, stock market crashing worse than we've seen since the Depression. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than this. Donald Trump was stoic, looked sick last night, in my opinion, and really that was a declaration of war to expect chaos. If you're in Europe right now and you're trying to get back home to the United States, I mean, this is the most chaotic day I think we've seen since Pearl Harbor. Anyways, click the link below, get my gold guide. I love you guys so much. Please take action. You want gold and silver today. I would not wait, because once prices start skyrocketing the other way, you're not going to be able to get in. There's just too much volume overload, just like everyone's trying to get out now to get liquid to cash so they can buy gold and other investments. So, love you guys so much, and I'll talk to all of you soon.
Now, family, what you notice, what you listen to, what you have access to is information that's designed to inform you, to put you in the know. You will not be able to say, since you're actually a listener of WTVTA radio, that you did not know. They say we will perish for the lack of knowledge. They say the revolution will not be televised. We say, what if it is? You just didn't know. The best way to keep a slave is to make him not want to become free. Because liberty and freedom cannot exist without first being willing to sacrifice everything for liberty. Because freedom is the fruits of liberty. There's so many of us that are under the illusion of entitlement. You think that just because you are here that you're entitled to be free, when on the contrary, freedom is what you're willing to fight for. Freedom is what you're willing to live for. Freedom is what you're willing to die for, because liberty are all those things that you strive for. Freedom is the fruits of liberty. And maybe call it strange, sentimental, or whatever, but this coronavirus is starting to unite and unify a lot of people in a lot of ways, because they're beginning to think about their own mortality and the well-being of their families. And all those things is designed to have you dwell upon a power that's greater than yourself. Isn't it ironic that everything that happens in the universe is ordained by the Most High? All it took was the Most High to simply remind you of who's in control. Everybody's scrambling around now. No, this is not the time to get afraid or be scared or fearful. These are not things of the Most High. These are times that you should expect to live each day as if it was your last. These are the days that you're expected to stand for something and fall for anything. These are the times that you're here to actually literally say, you know what, all right, there's some new stuff happening now. You know, they don't have the March Madness scheduled like it normally was. You know, some new stuff happening. You know, they're postponing all these sports activities, entertainment activities. What is the Most High trying to tell me? He's trying to tell you, in my humble opinion, that you need to wake up. You need to take heed. You don't have as much time as you think. See, this information is designed not to confine you, but to free you. These are exciting times to be alive, but it's only for those that are willing to actually implement what they have learned. This is not for the naysayers, the speculators, the ones that are sitting on the sidelines, because let me explain this to you. When they give you the numbers of how many individuals are projected to be gone after this next 7 to 14 days of this coronavirus, you will realize that the Most High is King. Always have been, always will be. See, a lot of you people are going to realize you're going to get along better with your spouse than you never did before in your life, because you're not going to argue about the things that don't matter. The only argument you're going to have in your house is who ate the last bean, because that's going to be what's happening. See, it takes a lot of energy to dwell in negativity. So you're going to start dealing with things that actually matter, not all that speculative bullshit. There is a spiritual connection here. Say what you want about Donald Trump, but he's a lot of things, and stupid is not one of them. Think about what he did with H.R. 5404. Read that piece of legislation that I showed you today. Read it with a vengeance. Read it with the reasoning of why. Read it with the reasoning of, whoa, had I only knew this sooner. But it's never too late. Read it as if your life depended upon it, because in a lot of you guys' cases that's actually listening to the sound of my voice, it's just that detrimental. See, I know my time here is a short time. I came here to lead you to the water, but I cannot make you drink it. And I no longer feel the burden that I have to save everyone. It's not my job. I can't save no one. I can only save myself. And I can only give my family instructions. Whether they take those instructions on to them, but as long as I give it with all my heart and all severity and certainty and sincerity, I've done my part. We will be conducting actual Cecil classes, 8302 return. Actually, 8302 classes is what we call it. To actually show you through a shared impairment how one is to navigate through this now established system. And we are at the point of a global reset. Those of you who don't know what a global reset is, keep listening, because if you listen long enough, you just might learn something.
To the crisis. It has seen over 80,000 confirmed cases and over 3,000 deaths. A combination of locking down cities, contact tracing and social distancing, like staying at home, closing schools and banning mass gatherings, appear to be slowing the virus. And new research suggests it could have been a lot worse. It's now estimated that the true number of cases in China is in fact closer to 115,000. And had authorities not intervened, there could have been 67 times more cases. That's over 7.5 million people. Researchers believe if China had acted 3 weeks earlier, the number of cases could have been reduced by 95%. China's response has earned praise from the World Health Organization.
Welcome to
and
the
with
World
the pandemic
Global
now
Reset
declared,
United Nations
it's expressed
conference call.
guarded criticism.
Today is Friday, March 13th, 2020. We are the Global Network. I'm Shelley Bowling, and our speaker is Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson, the Ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court. He's also known as Yehoshua Mashiach, the Son of Man. It's great to be back with our global family. Yes, Father Yah Allah has again given us the breath of life, and for that we are always thankful. Therefore, it is a beautiful Rise and Shine Day, family. We do thank you for joining us and inviting everyone you know to these calls. For those of you that are new, we'd like for you to become a guest. That's a G-U-E-S-S, not a G-U-E-S-T. Doctor and I hope you'll keep us guessing if you'll ever leave. Of course, it's our heart's desire that you remain with us, because the information you're getting from these calls you're not getting anywhere else on the planet. As Dr. Henderson is both the Ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court and the Son of Man, he is bringing us the judgments and the sentencings of all unrighteousness on this planet. In addition to that, he is the Redeemer and has redeemed back to mankind what has been taken from them all of these millennia, as well as given us the true interpretation of all of the Holy Scriptures and the fulfillment of all of the holy prophecies in all of these books. The Global Network has 2 websites sovcpr.com and .org. That's S as in Sam, O, V as in Victor, CPR, like cardiopulmonary resuscitation.com and .org. On these websites, you're going to find letters from Dr. Henderson to the global leaders, historical and educational information, how you may submit letters of complaint and intent to the Universal World Court, how to submit projects, resumes, names for the redemption list, any general questions, and participate in the indexing. Also, please check out the archives of the calls if you've missed one. And if you're new, we highly recommend you listen to them from the oldest to the newest, as this will give you a great overview. For those of you that are learning about indexing and its purposes or sharing that information with someone, please check out the home page at the bottom on the .com website is an 18-minute audio link explaining how Dr. Henderson and the Global Network put everything together lawfully and in order over the last 30-plus years. The indexing is what identifies you under the new system kingdom of Father Ya'Allah. The Global Network is working with 7 billion people in 198 nations. The nations have united together with Father Ya'Allah in one mind, one heart, and one spirit. They've come together as a family of mankind, using their treaties of peace and friendship to assist one another in going forward in restoring their people and their nation's infrastructures. They're using the 5 divine principles of life, which are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We always like to read you the list of nations. This is so those of you that are new will know who's working with us, but also this is our way of showing you, our brothers and sisters around the world, our love, our appreciation, and our thanks for your continued hard work in all of these areas. So I'd like to go ahead and yield the call to our beloved sister Akira to please come read the list of nations. Rise and shine, Akira.
Rise and shine. These are the 198 nations that are in the World Global Reset Restoration Network. Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Andorra, Angola, Antigua y Barbuda, Argentina, Armenia, Aruba, Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Barbados, Belarus, Belgium, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Bolivia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, Brazil, Brunei, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Burma, Burundi, Cambodia, Cameroon, Canada, Cape Verde, Central African Republic, Chad, Chile, China, Colombia, Comoros, Congo, Costa Rica, Côte d'Ivoire, Croatia, Cuba, Curacao, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Djibouti, Dominica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador, England, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Estonia, Ethiopia, Fiji, Finland, France, Gabon, Gambia, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Grenada, Guatemala, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Hong Kong, Hungary, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Kiribati, Korea, Kosovo, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Latvia, Lebanon, Lesotho, Liberia, Libya, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Macau, Macedonia, Madagascar, Malawi, Malaysia, Maldives, Mali, Malta, Marshall Island, Mauritania, Mauritius, Mexico, Micronesia, Moldova, Monaco, Mongolia, Montenegro, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Native American Tribal Confederation, Nauru, Nepal, Netherlands, Netherlands Antilles, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Niger, Nigeria, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, Palau, Palestinian territories, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Romania, Russia, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Samoa, San Marino, Sao Tome and Principe, Saudi Arabia, Scotland, Senegal, Serbia, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Singapore, St. Martin, Slovakia, Slovenia, Solomon Islands, Somalia, South Africa, Spain, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Suriname, Swaziland, Sweden, Switzerland, Syria, Taiwan, Tajikistan, Tanzania, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Togo, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Uganda, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, Uzbekistan, Vanuatu, Venezuela, Vietnam, Wales, Yemen, Zambia, and Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Akira.
Thank you.
Well, family, we are all basically all in the same boat. We are all looking after our loved ones, looking after our nations as our nation's leaders come to grips with dealing with the coronavirus. We have seen many of those that have been in high positions, political leaders. We have seen several of those so-called idols, whether they be sports or film or whatever, also dealing with this same situation. As we look around the world, there are certain things that bring into focus what is truly necessary for life. And dealing with a pandemic happens to be one of those things. Because that in itself is a great equalizer. Of course, we already know that Father Yah Allah has made mankind equal because He gave us our sovereignty as our Creator. We were all created equally in His sight. Now we must all deal equally with this situation. Many of the things that we're dealing with now are simply common sense items to deal with. There are those in positions that have greater abilities simply because they are in and have been in positions of authority or position than mankind. But mankind has something greater than any position, greater than any access that money can buy. And that is those true believers in Yah Allah have access to the truth and have access to the Creator Himself. As we focus on what is truly important, which is that relationship with our Creator, we are an encouragement to those around us that may be in fear. Perfect love casts out all fear. Those of you that listen to these calls regularly, you recognize that. And that perfect love places us in a position of protection. That place of protection is greater than anything that any money or position can buy. We're seeing the economic impact globally as our brothers and sisters around the world have been facing some of these things longer than those of us that happen to be in the so-called U.S. are now just starting to face ourselves. There has been wisdom gained from those that have faced these things in the past. Some of our brother and sister nations have faced SARS and Ebola and all kinds of things in the past, and they are better prepared to put in place protocols for the protection of their people. This is a time when we need to be wise enough to learn from our brothers and sisters that have already been in these positions. So we're watching how each one faces the crisis that is before us. And of course, we already know that our scientists globally are communicating with one another as dealing with this situation. The economic impact of the coronavirus is going around the planet now. However, Father Yah's economy, if you want to call it an economy, actually his provision is already in place. The Son of Man, Dr. Henderson, who we call Yehoshua Mashiach, and the Global Network have known for years that this was coming. Of course, the Son of Man gets his wisdom directly from our Creator, Father Yah Allah. And as having that wisdom, being able to see off in the distance what is coming, preparations have been made for the complete restoration of mankind. It's all in place, family. Those of our nation's leaders know this. Now, whether they're telling the people that depends on where you are and what's happening. Transparency is the important thing, family, as we share truth. Because it is truly indeed this truth that will set us free. And not man's interpretation of the truth, but actual, factual-based truth. So now we go forward, working, staying focused to make sure that that truth and that wisdom is provided. There are those that are in positions that have been preparing for this for quite some time. Those of you that have listened to these calls for years, we know that many of you are prepared. Because for years, Dr. Henderson and I have been telling you how to prepare, what to do to prepare, knowing that these times were coming. So it's very simple. If you are prepared and have the ability, you can simply stay home. That way you're not exposing yourself. But we also know that there's those of you that do not have that option. Either financially you must go to work because you've still got bills to pay and you do not have what is necessary as far as economically. But have no fear, because Father Yah Allah knows all things and knows exactly where each and every one of us is at this time. He knows what we have and what we do not have. He knows what we need and we do not need. And therefore he has made provision for his children in all facets of life and gives us what is necessary. If we must go out into the world, then we go in faith, trusting him, knowing that he has provided for each and every one of us. And if we have the option to not, then we also know that he has provided for us in that way as well. Different nations' protocols are being put in place, and of course the people of those nations need to focus on what is being required of them as citizens or sovereign principles residing within those areas. Of course, human rights abuses is something that is easily overlooked. Our human rights are easily overlooked during times like this. And of course, those are the things that our global leaders are looking at as well. Where's the boundary line between protecting and overreach of that protection? We've got to be wise in what we do, family. and as a family come together to not only protect us and our own family, but to protect the families of those around us. There are different protocols in place that you can check out in your own nation of what is required for monitoring yourself. If you do have to self-quarantine, what is actually involved in that, and the repercussions in our own areas of if we break those self-quarantines, what would we be facing? These are the protocols that we need to know and be aware of, family, depending on where we live and what has been put in place in our own areas. At this point in time, family, we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have the restoration of this planet ahead of us. We of the Global Network have been called to do this. This restoration is in place. And the work that we have to do, we know what is called and prepared for us to do individually. Yehoshua has told us that those of the unrighteous are being brought down. In many ways now, they are actually being brought down through the militaries of the nations, going and picking them up and bringing them to justice. As that happens, things continue to get better because these areas of human rights abuses now are being dealt with. We have our brothers and sisters in the military globally that are actually going out and shutting down the pedophile rings, the sex trafficking rings. And yes, this is continuing to go on during this time frame. Just because coronavirus is running across the planet does not mean that there's not things going on in the background. Good things, things that are necessary. Because preparation has been made months ago for this. Whether they are spread naturally or whether they are spread intentionally through targeted bioweapons is really neither here nor there, because they still affect us in different ways and in different locations, and we're still having to deal with them. But those of the unrighteous now, maybe not involved in the pedophile rings, but are in high positions, so-called high positions of political, judicial, their crimes are now being brought to justice as well. So we have a two-phase or two-prong thing going on, family, globally. Those dealing with the coronavirus, our medical and scientific departments working together, political departments working together for the benefit of mankind, and also the continued takedown of the unrighteous systems. So now all of these things are being gone through, family, with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that as we do work through all of these things, that we do so with wisdom. The wisdom of Yahweh and His Son. The wisdom of common sense. Because as sovereign principles, we must be responsible ourselves. As a sovereign principle, we govern ourselves under Father Yahweh. And that self-governance requires us to use the best wisdom and judgment in our situations, not only for ourselves, but for those around us that are of the innocent. So we're working, family, towards this end for your behalf. Just because these things are going on does not stop the work that we are doing. We know that the plagues are still continuing around the world, that the locusts, these are also other plagues that our brothers and sisters are dealing with. Mankind will survive this, family, because Father Yah-Allah has promised us that we will. Now, He did not say that we could not destroy ourselves, but also we know that those of the righteous way far outweigh those of the unrighteous. So we are sharing that wisdom, that knowledge with one another. We are sharing what Father Yah-Allah has called us to do. Those of you that are on these calls regularly, you are sharing the wisdom and the information that Yehoshua Mashiach, Dr. Henderson, has been bringing to us. This wisdom comes from Father Yah-Allah. So it does us well to pay attention and stay focused. It does us well to share this information with those around us, because at this point, family, we do become our brother's keeper. Many of our brothers and sisters are still asleep. They do not have the wisdom and the understanding that those of you of the righteous have. So we don't have to be in their face with it, but simply give them the truth. Of course, they will either accept it or reject it. Because what we're dealing with right now, family, is truth or a lie, life and death. There are many different types of coronavirus that we're dealing with right now. These things are morphing and changing and mutating. Some of them are natural things. Coronavirus has been around for a long time. Basic coronavirus in itself really is a non-issue. But then there are also those things that are bioweapons that have been manufactured by man for the destruction of man. So we're dealing with all of these things, family, simultaneously. But we must know that we do get through this. We are getting through this. Many that have been diagnosed with coronavirus are recovering just fine. So the manipulation of the media and the fear mongering is out there, that we don't have to fall for it, family. We just need to stay focused, stay on track, and do what Father Yah-Allah has called each and every one of us to do as a family. Nothing will deter us from this family, this job that is before us. We know that those of you that are regularly on here truly are one mind, one heart, and one spirit with Father Yah-Allah. Of course, we know we do have the unrighteous listening as well, and of course you're going to do what your Father tells you to do. But your Father is simply a fallen angel. Our Father is the creator of all things, the creator of heaven and earth. Everything that's above it, everything that's within it, everything that's beneath it, and everything that is around it. and nothing is greater than what he is. So do what you're going to do if you are of the unrighteous, for you will simply prove yourself to be who you are. And as of the works of your hands show who you are, then we will be more than happy to come and pick you up and send you to where Father Yah-Allah has said you will go, which is the bottomless pit. That pit is truly bottomless. You do get an opportunity to burn and fall for all eternity. We, however, of the righteous are going to be living with our Creator, Father Yah-Allah, in His kingdom, a beautiful and a glorious kingdom, where there is no sickness, there is no disease, that He promises to wipe away our tears from the things that have transpired, the things that have passed. He not only promises to wipe away our tears, but that we will not remember these things anymore. That He will come here, and we won't have any need of the sun or the moon for light. For He Himself will be our light and our glory. Soon, family, what we're going through right now will be a distant past memory. And that memory will fade into the eternity past. For our hearts will be light, our hearts will be filled with the joy of Father Yah-Allah and His Son. They actually should be filled with that same joy now if we are true believers. For His peace goes way beyond our ability to comprehend and even understand it. That peace can carry us through every situation that we're going through right now. That peace, family, has the ability to reside within each and every one of us if we will only believe. So, as Yehoshua tells us all the time, what a joyous time to be alive. Because we are truly seeing what has been written. Family, you that are on this planet right now were created and called by Father Yah-Allah for such a time as this. Those of you of the righteous that you have chosen, you have bowed your knee to Father Yah-Allah and His Son. You have chosen well. And you indeed were created by Father Yah-Allah to come into this time frame, to be who you are, and to be where you are doing what you're doing. It was appointed for us to be here at this time. Having proven ourselves in times past to be true believers and followers of Yah-Allah. So stand firm knowing who you are as a sovereign principle. We must stand firm knowing what we have been called, each and every one of us individually, to do. For it is the works of our hands that proves our faith. Our hands have been placed to the plow, We see the furrow ahead of us that needs to be plowed in and the seed sown. We're not going to take our hands off the plow. We're not going to look back. But we're going forward with strength of purpose, with the strength that Father Yah Allah has put within us. And we have heard Yehoshua say this before, that when we are weak, our Creator, Father Yah, is strong. So whether we find ourselves in a place of weakness, or if we are following in a place of strength, it matters not, because we all do face these things. We face the sniffles, we face the coughs, we face flu, etc. Some of us have recently been through these things, but yet we're still here because Father Yah Allah has taken care of us. So family, I'm telling you these things as an encouragement and as a love from your sister. For I too am your family. So our heart's desire is that you may all be well. We know that Father Yah Allah has you. We keep you in our prayers continually. And for those of you that pray for us, we thank you for those as well. We do feel them. Family, have no fear. Trust Father Yah Allah and His Son. And know that we have been called and chosen by Yah to complete the work that is ahead of us. So family, I'm not going to keep you much longer. I know that we all have a lot of work ahead of us. We still do have the U.S. call this evening, and we know that many of our international brothers and sisters join us at that time as well. For those of you, of our brothers and sisters around the world, you may be on the opposite side of the planet from us right now, and you're getting ready to maybe have your last meal and lay down and get some rest. We know that you have a big day ahead of you, as we do. It's light on our side, and so we have a big day ahead of us, making sure that what we get done is done on your behalf at the call of Father Yah Allah, to make sure that everything gets done properly and in order. So until this evening, family, get you some rest if it's dark in your area. We love you, family, and we are going to continue, as always, with our hands to the plow, working on your behalf. We look forward to being with you this evening. Until then, as always, we leave you with John 17, 14 through 17. I, Yehoshua, have given them your word, Father Yah, and the world has hated them, because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth, Father Yah. Your word is truth. Until this evening, family, peace and love, and nightfall.
All right. Hopefully everybody was definitely able to get the actual worthy message that Shirley Bowen was bringing from those that are actually working with Dr. Henderson. The reason why this is important is because everybody has to remember what we're here for. Why are we here? What are we actually doing? See, In order for you to know where you're going, you got to know where you came from. There's a lot of information that's actually floating around. There's a lot of things that we can definitely pay attention to. The key to it is those of you that are actually being focused on trustee training, this is the time for you to become very proactive in planning out your estate. This is the time that you need to really focus. You know, there's going to be major distractions because a lot of things are happening. But you should use this time wisely to do as much studying as possible to resonate on the higher frequency in order for you to truly see that the glass is not half empty but half full. The information is designed to free your mind, not to blow your mind, but to free your mind. See, current expected credit losses was planned since 2017. And you have been having a series of events that are all lining up in order for us to take on this new accounting standard. And this new accounting standard ushers in a new beginning of this global reset. And this global reset is a financial reset, a tearing down of the old system and a rebuilding or integrating into the new system. And this new system has already been in place because since 2017, they have been implementing stage by stage, inch by inch, step by step, their formidable plan under Agenda 21. Now, the question I pose, for those that are actually ready to move forward in a positive way for proper estate planning and infrastructure, you guys know how to contact me. If you're actually tuned into this particular broadcast through what they call VIA, YouTube, then you know how to get at me. There's a chat here. What I want you to do is I want you to definitely move in a direction so you have a positive outcome during this time of need or an urgency. Because there are going to be a lot of people, excuse me, in my opinion, a lot of people that if they don't focus, they're going to miss this transformation of wealth. Their estate is going to be forever imprisoned in this invisible veil upon using what they call these silent weapons. You know, there's a book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And this is one of these silent weapons for this quiet war. We will be introducing what we call 8302 classes. We will actually be placing into our Bitrix space the information pertaining to these 8302 classes. It makes perfect sense for us to not hold back, but to move forward. These 8302 classes are designed to move someone in a formidable space to a formidable structure. This is going to be an RSVP event. You're going to be given information on what you need in order to secure your spot. I actually share a lot of proprietary information, which means these are tried and true methods that are presently being used, that have been perfected by Bezel Bay and Associates, Diversity Trust, Diversity Holdings, and all affiliated entities and subsidies. This information is under what we call the Recapture and Recovery Program. It's designed to move all those that are in the position to preserve the integrity of their estate into a point of fruition, which means to know. A point of fruition, what means to grow. A point of fruition, in order for one to actually understand that it's accounting, and it works for those that are willing to be accountable, to hold those accountable. See, the wonderful thing about current expected credit losses is that if you perform it, you're able to receive a tax credit. Oh, did I say that? But you're actually able to receive an actual credit for double the amount for every loss that you show. But these things come with a heavy burden if you don't substantiate. You must substantiate. You must use currency transaction reports. You must use 8300 forms. Just to name a few. You know, some of you may want to do an 8381 to make sure that your entity is not a disregarded entity. these things will be spoken to in various different test settings. Let's not to make mention that those of you that are participating in the 8302 classes that will be held tomorrow, we also be given a special incentive to participate in, for the first time, under the Moorish Science University, which we offered a program that allows you to utilize a lot of this information. We're going to give you one better. Since the state of the national emergency was actually announced, there was a lot of actual waiving of certain things. And what was most ironic is that they were waiving student loans. I want you to pay attention to this. If you are in a position where you can move, you need to send me contact information or reach me via a email and or Bitrix Messenger. So therefore we can get you lined up. The 8302 classes, because of limited spacing, we're going to ask everyone who's interested in those classes to go through our Bitrix space or those that referred you to this channel or link. Find the individual that brought you to where you are right now in order for you to receive this information that I'm about to give you. The classes will start in a perpetual proponent by participation. I need at least 10 to 15 active participants in this class. These 10 to 15 participants minimally are going to be asked to secure their spot of making an actual pledge or a donation. The donation is actually used to facilitate all the hard work and proprietary information is going to be used to give you the curriculum necessary to perpetuate your estate. And for all intents and purposes, I don't think that most of my listeners are in a position, but we do offer lawful legal money in the aspect of gold and silver for those that are willing to participate. And we do offer this in the aspect of a donation of a certain amount. But I'm going to go here. The classes for 8302 returns and actually all things considered 8302 information will start out at a $75 proportion. That way I will have a captive audience of individuals who are definitely motivated because they've made an actual investment. Unfortunately, I cannot offer these classes without that level of participation because this is my family estate. I do take pride in that estate. I do take pride in the beneficiaries that are attached to that estate. And I must protect the beneficiaries of the estate because my job as a fiduciary is to preserve the integrity of the estate. This is not a free lunch. And so therefore, there's going to be a $75 participation in order for us to reach what we need to do. And it's for two reasons. Once that's out of the way, I can do what I do best, which is teach. When that's not done, then I have to hold back certain things because I do not understand, I have no control over what happens once information is being used without certain precautions being taken. This will be in a closed session. This will not be done on a YouTube format because we do not want to put proprietary information over the VIA internet, which is a public sector proponent. This will be a privately conducted session. Those that are interested, you know how to get in touch with me. So I will become very proactive in the aspect of those 8302 classes because we will share these documents. I will walk you through a live filing and reporting, which means I will actually run an actual return in order for you to see verbatim what all the jazz is about. But it's based on perception, and participation. As you can tell, since they've already declared the state of national emergency, there are a lot of people right now that are getting in touch with me to get their state put in a certain position. And my job is to just be a messenger. I can lead you to water. I cannot force you to drink it. But I'm very committed to all of those that have made necessary sacrifices, if you will. The tribunals Unlike a lot of other things that are being done and postponed, the tribunals will be conducted in that capacity. All cases that are looking to be looked at from an arbitrary standpoint shall and should be faxed to the appropriate fax number that I actually placed into Bitrix. For all intents and purposes, that too is information that I cannot put on this particular sector, only because this is a public forum, but I will make available to those that send a request. So all those that are actually in this particular Bitrix space that have access to the chat, send me a chat message, let me know that you're actually interested, but you may not be a part of the Bitrix, and I will make the necessary arrangements to get you there. Those of you who don't know what an 8302 return is. An 8302 return is a return that will allow you to preserve the integrity of your state, because it's going to allow you to recapture, recover 6% of all expenses that were spent over the course of the last 12 months. In other words, if you can show me expenses, this program will allow you to recoup 6% of those expenses in the form of a tax return to the beneficiary and or trustee of the estate. There's no limit to how many let me say it differently. There's not a limit to the amount of beneficiaries that can actually be brought through this platform. There is no limit. Like, again, in most tax structures, you have a limit based on exemptions. To give an example, a lot of people will only get, if you got more than 3 children, the Internal Revenue Code, what we call the IRC, will only give you a designated expected allowance up to 3 children. 4 children, they will still classify and count that file, but they will limit the actual exemption to 3 children. But in this particular structure, there is no limit. And if your child, and this is my opinion, professional opinion, if the child is old enough in order to answer the phone and take out the garbage, the child isn't dependent. He's also an employee. So you need to be, if this sounds like something you're interested in, especially with, see right now, so you can actually convert these type of returns into gold and silver. I don't know if you're just paying attention to those that are actually been prepping and moving, in this particular search. Those who have been listening to me for the last 7 years, they know what I've been preaching and teaching and stressing. So it's not a secret. But this may be the first time you're actually listening to me or hearing me. This is now the time to get very proactive with dealing with gold and silver. You want to get as much of that in your portfolio as possible, and you want to use it as a hedge and leveraging component. You want to get acclimated in that as quickly as possible. And the reason why is because as things become more and more turbulent, we're going to have to literally move in that proportion. Literally, you're going to have to do that. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. A lot of information about the coronavirus is going to spring into other things because it is a great prohibitor and a restrictor and a limiter. What did I tell you about paying attention to the global reset? When they have a major event that's going to disrupt commerce, cause banking holidays, disrupt commerce. What do you think, what type of commerce do you think they're prohibiting when they're not allowing in certain cities like New York City gatherings of over 500 people, especially for basketball games and things of that sort? That's a major disruption of what? Commerce. You are watching the global reset unravel. HR 54 is not a drill. And if you don't have any physical species of gold and silver in your portfolio, I am going to give you, I can only, like I said, 75 is the minimum donation for this class. Only because my family is not going to play with me about the proprietary information that's used to build the integrity of the estate. And so I cannot play with it with others. So we put that minimal value on it just for the information. Again, what you do with this information, Again, it's going to require, certain things. But I feel that everybody, look, you got time. They ain't got games on right now. You got time. This should be very, very important to you. Matter of fact, it should be one of the most important things you do this weekend, in my opinion. As you can tell, this is what I'm doing with my family. We're having family meetings and associations, and we're about establishing the integrity of this state. That way we don't have to be subject to a lot of the things that's coming, because this is just the beginning. The state of emergency, let me explain it to you from a different perspective. They have not canceled the PGA Masters golf tournaments since World War II. The Dow lost more points than since the Great Depression. So I think this requires some special attention. We can't talk about Banking in the Box. The Banking in the Box program is definitely part of the space. Matter of fact, it's a conjoiner. Those of you that are in a position where you can move forward with that Banking in the Box platform, you need to make it known. Again, because I got a lot of people with international clients abroad. I got a lot of clients internationally that have already started implementing their Banking in the Box, and they're in a very unique position because of this corona environment, especially dealing with logistics. Again, I'm going to say this the best way I can. They say the revolution will not be televised. We say, what if it is? You just didn't know it. See, today is the day. Today is the day that you make that change. See, a lot of folks have been speculating all along for the last 7 to 10 years about what is about to happen. We're letting you know that it's happening now, right before your eyes. Because the revolution that they say will not be televised, we say it is, you just don't realize it. It's happening right before your eyes. Donald J. Trump is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. You can say what you want, but this is the same individual that hosted a show called The Apprentice, and his favorite line was, "You're fired." Watched the episode of actually Shark Tank today, and it reminded me of just how far we came. All I'm saying is that if you don't pay attention, you may miss one of the biggest opportunities for you to come out on top of these chaotic times. A lot of people are panicking. Panic comes and it stems from fear. But anything that creates fear is not of the Most High. Now, if this information is designed to unify you and draw you closer to the Most High, then you're at the right place at the right time. Again, I will be posting the actual information on how to get those donations in, so therefore everyone is on point. I'm going to give until actually 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for everyone to get everything in, so therefore we can commence. I need a minimum of 10 to 15 individuals participating in the class in order for it to be really worth the proponent of what we're going to be going over. I'm going to actually conduct an 8302 return for all of those that participate, and if you don't know what an 8302 return is, go back and listen to CISO. Go back and listen to what we talk about with Banking in the Box. Go back and listen to all this information and catch up. You got time. And then if it's something that you're interested in moving forward, the gloves came off when Donald J. Trump declared the state of emergency. I'm giving a lot of information. This has been a very beneficial Jumu'ah. Happy holy day for all Moors that are there. Ashe, peace and love in Islam. These are exciting times to be alive. I ask that everyone within the sound of my voice take heed to the information that's here and be able to utilize this information in a certain capacity. With that, I want you to tune in to 365 Live Special broadcast is being put together as we speak. Who knows, I may be still live in that capacity. My job is to get this information to you. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm going to ask that you actually post them in our Bitrix space. I'll do my best to definitely answer them and get back to you as quickly as possible. I appreciate everybody's time and energy. I don't want to take up the rest of your Friday evening, especially with those that are actually in the proponent to actually work in what we're working with. Again, if you need access to Bitrix, matter of fact, you can leave a posting here in the chat. If I see it in the chat, then I know I can possibly move forward in that capacity. If not, I'm going to ask again that you stay tuned in. 365 Live. This is where we get all of our content. This is what we're putting out. Special broadcasts coming down the pipeline. This has everything to do with what we talked about. Matter of fact, I may give you a sneak peek on what we're talking about with the 8302 return. So again, if you want some of that information, tune into our broadcast, which shall be, it's actually commencing as we speak right now. I'm getting ready to drop some live content there. Appreciate everybody's time and energy. Remember, if you listen long enough, you just might learn something. Today is the day. They said a revolution will not be televised. We say, what if it is? We just didn't know it. And with that, we're going to say peace and love, family. Peace and love.